Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater. Welcome to this episode of Her Success Story. So today I have an amazing guest. I know they're always amazing guests, but Danielle Wiley and I had such a wonderful conversation, a woman-to-woman conversation, a conversation of what it's like to be in partnership versus a solopreneur, in all the things she's done. She's a working mom. She makes things happen. Danielle is the founder and CEO of Sway Group. It's an agency that supports large community of influencers and connects them right back to brands for high-impact marketing campaigns. So one of the things I loved about Danielle educating me is understanding the impact of influencer marketing, something we've not spoken a lot about during her success story. So she comes with 25 years of industry experience. She was widely recognized as an industry leader in content marketing, influencer marketing, and social media strategy. Her background is she had worked at Edelman's Chicago-based digital business group. Edelman and I never pronounce it right, although I've been to New York. I've been to their location on Hudson Street in New York about major events. So Danielle, help me here.
It's Edelman.
Edelman. So one of my favorite things about going down to Edelman's on Hudson is how many great restaurants in that part of New York City there is. So I love going to events down there. So today we're talking to you from where? Because your life and your world has evolved. You're no longer in Chicago.
Yes, no, I keep moving westward. So I am in Marin County, just north of San Francisco now.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So share with me how you went from being part of a major corporation that has offices in almost all the big cities to opening your own company, and a little bit about Sway Group. Let's start there.
Yeah. Sure. So, I founded Sway Group 9 years ago. And as you said, I was at Edelman and their Chicago office prior to doing that. And I was running digital strategy. And what happened over the course of the 5 or 6 years that I was there is that we started using influencers more and more for paid content. And as someone who likes things done really, really well, high quality without wasting time, I was super, super frustrated by how difficult it was to make that happen with influencer. And my team was wasting a ton of time trying to figure out who are the best influencers to work with. We were having to negotiate separate contracts with each person. It was just really, really messy. And all I wanted to do was pick up the phone and say, here's my budget, here's what I need, make it happen, and trust that it would get done. And there was nowhere for me to call with that request. And so I did it myself. And here we are.
So in the beginning of Sway Group, being in business 9 years is an amazing feat. It's over the 2-year mark, the 3-year mark, the 5-year mark. And then as you step into the 10-year mark, and the evolution of business is a great and a fascinating place to be. So how did you start? You started doing it on your own. You saw the opportunity of influence marketing. And I'm going to be really honest with you. 10 years, 7 to 10 years ago, when people said to me like, oh, I want to be an influencer. I want to start a blog. How do I make money? And I'm pretty good at making money. And I would be like, I'm not sure. So what did you see, and how did this transform for you?
What I mostly saw was a ton of talent. So working at Edelman, which is a huge PR firm, we were always using spokespeople, whether it was Tori Spelling for a Huggies campaign, or I'm trying to think of that's always the example I give because it was so silly. Using spokespeople was always a thing. And as a young mom at the time, my kids are now teenagers, and the type of commiserating I do with other moms is very different. But as a young mom, I was a huge user of social media and a follower of blogs, and the content that I was reading was phenomenal. And I was seeing that just myself as a consumer, how much I was being influenced by what I was reading in these blogs. Of course, back then it was just blogs with a little bit of Twitter. Instagram wasn't even a thing yet. But the talent was, the quality of writing was so good, and the connection that I felt with these writers was so deep. And so as I was sitting in these big meetings and brainstorming initiatives, it kept occurring to me that we had to use influencers for this stuff because they were connecting on such a deep level with their readers. And so we started using them more and more, and it was just an obvious evolution. And I think hearing what you said about 8 to 10 years ago, when people asked you how to do it and make money, you didn't know. No one knew then. I mean, back then people started blogs because they wanted to have an outlet to share their writing, and they wanted to connect with other people. It wasn't about making money. It's very different now. We see people getting into the space for the sole purpose of making money. But back when this first started, it was having a place to share your writing and tell your story.
So how does a person walk out of a lucrative corporate job and say, I can do this, let's go? Like, where did the gumption come from? And then where did the mechanics of how did you get started?
Yeah, it took a good 2 years of psyching myself up to do it. I never wanted, growing up, being an entrepreneur, being a CEO was not on my radar. It was never something I wanted to do. It seemed really stressful and a lot of work. But at a certain point, I realized I would regret. It seemed like such an obvious idea to me to start this company and what the problem that we were going to solve. And I knew that someone was going to do it first if I didn't, and I couldn't live with that. But it took 2 years of psyching myself up, and finally, I am really lucky to have a husband who also helps to support the family, and he got a new job that gave us a little extra wiggle room. And so I had that like small moment in time where I had the leeway to make a move. And so there was this is like really granular, but there was a mom blogger conference taking place that I couldn't attend, but I knew that the top 25 bloggers who I wanted to work with were going to be at this conference. So I sat down pretty much like a delegate to that conference with a pile of NDAs and a pile of commitment letters. And she pitched this idea that I had to all 25 of them. And so I said to my husband, I was like, okay, if she can get 10 to sign on, I know I can make this work financially. I know it'll bring in enough money. And I was actually on a family vacation, and she was texting me updates. And within one day, she had all 25 had signed the letter. And so I quit my first day back from our vacation. I quit my job.
There's something I always said, and I don't know if I've shared it as part of our success story in the 2.5 years we've been going out here or so. But I know when I even had my printing company, let alone when I've had Slater Success for a dozen years now, whenever I got ready to go on vacation, opportunity walked in the door. And it's a wild, wild thing. And it happened. We were at a wedding in Maine, and I pushed my husband to make a long weekend. I was like, oh my God, it's like a 5.5 hour, 6 hour trip to Maine. We're going to drive. I don't want to just go for like the wedding. Let's make it like the weekend. Let's go Thursday to Sunday. Let's spend the day on the beach. Let's do this. Let's go eat lobster rolls, And he's like, I'm busy. I have so much work to do. I was like, we have to live, and I do this whole pitch, Danielle. And that morning I drag his butt onto the beach, and the phone rings, and he closes a huge job. So there is something to be said about the universe supporting us in living and building simultaneously.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing it.
It's nice. I hadn't told it in a while, and it brings a smile to my face. It was such a, it's just nice to learn that other people believe in what your vision is, and that it's strong enough to live on its own, even without you there giving the spiel yourself. That I made it happen with a delegate.
So I have to say something. There's not a lot of companies out there, and I want to like give you a huge shout out for this, who's built it from the bottom up, completely self-funded. You know, so you have not raised VC capital. You haven't gotten loans from the bank. You haven't. So share a little bit about A, the guts to do that, and B, the financial savvy to do that.
I'd love to claim that it's financial savvy to do that. I think I did it 9 years ago. Is a very different market than what it is now, right? Like now VCs are the thing, startups are huge. It wasn't that big 9 years ago, and I didn't really know from raising money. It didn't really even occur to me at first. To me, I was like, well, if I can just make this self-sustaining, like why would I give away ownership if I don't have to? And I also didn't even know how it'd go about. I mean, I'm sure I could have figured it out. And then really by the time I thought to myself, gee, having some extra cash around would probably be helpful, we were already self-sustaining. And I mean, every conversation, my husband actually has gone into VC in the interim, and now he's like, stay away. Don't do it. But any VC I talk to, excluding my husband, I mean, I've sat down and I've had conversations and I've talked about it, because certainly having extra investment can help growth go faster and can give you the freedom to do things that you might not be able to do when you're self-funded. But when I do sit down and talk to VCs, they tell me I'd be crazy to take on any investment at this point, because we're making it happen without that. And we haven't had to get rid of any equity. And I have 2 partners, and we're really happy with the equity that we each have now. And it would take a lot for us to give that up at this point.
It's so interesting. And I love hearing you say this, is whenever I wanted to raise more capital, like, I wanted to, guess what? Slater Success last year, I put out another book, and we rebranded our website, and we did and that, all have price tags on it. And, my concept is, okay, so let's go. What can we sell to make this happen? Mm-hmm. Versus where can we raise the capital? I always looked at, being in sales for 25, 30 years, that I have the ability to raise the capital through the work I do versus the people so I truly respect it. And I appreciate where you and your partners have come from in saying, we can do this. So share with me a little bit, how did the whole partnership come about? I mean, so you had this vision. Mm-hmm. You delegated, which, by the way, huge accolades. I can do this, I can't do that. So acknowledging what you could do is, hey, you booked a family vacation, the commitment to your family, yet seeing the opportunity and not saying, I can't be there, so I'll have to wait, versus seeing the opportunity and figuring out what can work. Mm-hmm. So where did the partnerships come from there?
Well, mostly from a desire a need to expand. So when I started the company, as I mentioned, we started with these 25 bloggers, and initially we kind of borrowed the model of a talent agency, and we represented them exclusively and took a percentage of whatever we negotiated for them. But what I quickly learned was that business model didn't fit in with how I wanted to run the business, because what as I've learned, what a talent agent does is they'll negotiate the deal and then they kind of step out, and it's up to, Tom Cruise's agent negotiates the deal, and then he steps away and trusts that Tom Cruise is going to do his Tom Cruise thing and make it happen. The agent doesn't have to follow up with anything and make sure he shows up on time and send a metrics report after the movie is done. But we do. So we stay involved. We project manage every piece of our programs. We make sure the influencers are doing what they need to do. We're measuring the results of the programs. We're sending out that report after the fact. And that talent agent percentage is not enough to cover all of that work and then also have some profit built in.
Well, right, because you're being a talent agent as well as the business manager.
Correct.
You're doing
correct.
two jobs.
So the other thing, so one, I realized it didn't make sense to have this exclusive relationship. And then the other thing I realized is that the clients that were coming to me and who I knew through my network needed a much deeper bench of influencers than I had with that 25. So I was getting really, really either huge requests, like we need to have 200 blog posts go live over the next 2 weeks to promote this new soup line coming out. Or I would get something very specific, like this is an actual request I got. We need moms who shop at Kroger who have kids between the ages of 8 and 12 who wet the bed. And when you have 25 bloggers, you can't do either one. You can't provide 200 blog posts and you can't provide Kroger shopper moms with bedwetters. I needed a much larger network of influencers. And so I started doing little test programs with other networks who I had heard of. And then my now partners actually came to me. They had heard about Sway and reached out asking if we could help sell their conference series for them. And through the course of those conversations, we discovered that they had built this community of about 15,000 female influencers who were basically all members of this online forum, sharing best practices and talking to each other about making a living through social media and supporting each other and giving each other shout outs. And they had never monetized that network at all. And so we started doing some test campaigns using that network, and it went really well. And I quickly realized that my now partners, Tiffany and Francesca, were just as type A as I am, and just as invested in making sure everything went perfectly, and that the community was so trusting of them and so engaged with them that we were getting this amazing work. And so really the easiest way to take these 25 mom bloggers and turn it into a network of thousands of influencers was to absorb what they had built. And we merged our two companies together and became the Sway Group that we are today.
So interesting fact is the three partners live in all different cities.
All different cities. Yep. So I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then my partner Francesca is up outside of Sacramento, and Tiffany is outside of San Diego. So we're all parts of California.
So how do you guys run a business that way? What has been the surprising things that have worked for you, and where's the challenges been when you have three owners in the same state yet three different cities?
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact our whole business is remote, so everyone works from home across the country, and I often say that it's our biggest strength and our biggest weakness at the same time. It is so great to be able to hire the best person for the job, no matter where she's located. And it's so great to be able to hire moms who want to have the flexibility to work from home and to be able to pick kids up from school and stay home with a sick kid or whatever and not have to worry about wasting all this time commuting to and from an office. And the same thing goes with the partners. So we work really, really well together, and we want to be partnered together. And so we make it work, and we are on Slack all the time. We have a text group that we use after hours. We do Zoom calls whenever we can because it's just so nice to see each other's faces. We make sure that we connect formally at least once a week, just so we are touching base. And then we try to get together in person at least once a quarter. And then,
Nice.
and once a year, we try to make that something fun, like a little getaway type of a retreat.
Great leadership. Hats off to you ladies, because you're touching, all the points of the consistent communication, the responsibility of team meetings and some face-to-face, even by the Zoom, which is my team, which is all virtual. We meet by Zoom as well once a week, and everybody could see each other. And we kick off our team meetings of what was the highlight of last weekend with your family or in your personal life. Always start kicking off on the positive, as well as making sure you're sitting down and having those quarterly and then an annual something that really builds a business forward.
Mm-hmm. And helps us just to stay connected with each other, because business can, no matter how great leadership is and how well things are going, business can be really, really stressful. And to know that we have that connection and we have each other's backs and we trust each other and we know each other. Like it's just really important to have that base there.
What has surprised you? If you look back 10 years ago, so you're in business 9, right? So if you look back 10 years ago when it was a budding idea and that, can I do this? Is this a business, etc.? What that runs through so many people's minds when we start, to 9 years later, what has been some of the surprises for you?
The industry as a whole has changed a ton. Just the types of influencers who we work with. So the influencers who got into it because they had a story to tell and had something they wanted to share, versus influencers who are now getting into it for the sole purpose of making money. I support all of it, but it's a very different paradigm. When we started it, you start with what you know, right? So those first 25 were all Gen X moms who pretty much all had kids in the same age range that mine are. We've done programs with 4-year-olds to 80-year-olds. So that expansion of age range it's definitely been surprising and actually pretty fun. I'm surprised on a daily basis. I'm struggling to limit it.
Let me ask you this. If we look past the surprises and we look at a tip for our listeners, or a tip or two, you choose, of what has helped you stay, business does evolve and will always continue to evolve. So as you said, what you started 9 years ago looks very different today. And it's probably going to look very different 9 years from now. Yeah. What tips do you have for our listeners who are business leaders to stay current in the evolution of business?
The most helpful thing for me has been being part of CEO advisory group. And as you know, there are tons out there. I'm in Vistage because it kind of found me, and I have a great chair and it's been wonderful. But it's really important to me to be constantly learning. I never went to business school. When I started the company, I didn't have a business plan. I had some notes written on the back of a receipt on my night table. So it's really important to me to keep moving myself personally forward as a leader, and just get lessons on negotiating and finance and just the business climate, and just constantly have my brain being stimulated like that is really important to me. And then the other thing I get out of it is just having the support from a small community doesn't have their own personal bias about my success. So I have a super supportive and very engaged husband, but he's biased towards what's best for our family as well. He should be. And then I have these two amazing partners, but they're biased towards what's best for moving the business forward in a way that's going to benefit them as well. They should be. And so it's really nice for me to have this outside group that is just there to support me. And they don't benefit at all if my company does well or doesn't do well. They're just there to offer me their support and their best advice. And it comes from this true place of just we just all try to help each other. And that's been invaluable.
I can't agree more. I mean, I've been part of groups like that for years. I lead groups like that. You know, we have something here, Slater Success Circles, which are groups of CEOs who are running companies. And you're right. I could have never, ever built the companies I have built because I show up with my vision that's going straight forward, right? I'm barreling forward, I'm running, I'm doing, and this and that. You know, my husband, as you well said, comes from the perspective of not just what's best for my family, which you're right, is incredibly important, but he loves me, right? Our spouses, our partners, please, Lord, love us, right? So they come in, they want to protect us a little bit. You know, it's their job in the love for us is to make sure we're protected. And so it's very hard to talk to your partner about taking some major risks, which all CEOs do, all leaders do, when they care about you so much and love you and want to protect you. So to have that bandwidth, that circle of, I call it my circle of trust, or my circle of trusted advisors, they have my back, yet no skin in the game, care about my success, and see my vision from an outside point of view as I'm expressing it, not from my inside heart. So that is a golden tip for every leader out there in business. Yeah. Please take it. Whether you join, you know, a Slater Success Circle, a Vistage group, there's many, many, many groups out there. Be part of something. Because it's very lonely running a business, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. That getting back to what has surprised me, I did not expect that. You know, when you're planning out your business and dreaming about it, you don't think about the loneliness. You also don't think about just all the little boring things that you have to, like, all you do is think about the sexy, exciting vision that you have. And, you know, then next thing you know, you're like negotiating liability insurance and dealing with payroll. And there's a lot of pieces and parts that, you know, are not part of that exciting, sexy dream you have.
And it's the reality, and some of the things that really like business insurance protects us. Payroll, it's a blessing because we have the ability to run, grow, and scale companies to have to deal with payroll. So it's a huge gift, yet in the details of it, it's not always the fun details.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces and parts, that's for sure.
I love it. Danielle, tell our listeners how they could learn more about you and Sway and stay in touch and keep up with everything you're doing, because you have some amazing things going on, and hats off to you and your partners to be a leader in the area of influencers. See opportunity and step into it.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can find us at swaygroup.com. And then I am personally very active on LinkedIn. You can find me just searching Danielle Wiley, but I post a weekly video, and I'm always sharing articles that are of interest to me, and definitely spending a lot of time there.
I think that's how we originally connected, was through LinkedIn.
Indeed.
So it's a great resource. Listeners, there's an enormous amount to learn from Danielle. She gave an amazing amount of insight, what it's like to build a business, to see and vision, to step into something that you never anticipated and truly build it. So hats off to you, Danielle. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. This is great.
And remember, please leave a note, leave a message. Let us know what your biggest takeaways from Danielle's interview and our discussion between the two of you were. Subscribe to Her Success Story. We come into your inbox every Monday morning with a new episode. See you next time.
Your approval anymore, 'cause I've got mine.